Hello everybody, this is Connor at BoatsDon'tSink here with another Shadowverse Evolve deck profile. This time we're going to be looking at Swordcraft. Cosmic Mythos has added some upgrades to the Heroic Sword deck that we looked at from BP03. So we're going to take a look at some of those upgrades and see what the deck can do now. As always, before we jump into the list, this is meant to be mostly a starting point. It's not optimized for any specific metas, so make sure you test out some cards, change it to your liking so that you're playing the best list for you. This is just sort of a baseline, lots of generic 3-ofs that we're looking at here. So the list, obviously it's going to look pretty similar to the heroic list from set 3. We're only playing 2 new cards from BP04 in here, with a, I believe 2 cards as well that we weren't playing in the last list that we've now added that were already existing cards. So very similar list, but it does have a much lower curve. You can notice that we've cut all of the 4, 5, 6 drops out of the deck. No more Leonidas, no more Alexander, all that stuff. We're just 3s and lower. We're a lot faster, a lot more aggressive now. Our evolve deck looking much the same since many of our high cost followers didn't evolve anyway. Our 2 higher cost evolves, being Albert and Leonidas, have been replaced with Mars, who is one of our new set 4 cards. And we're playing a 1-1 split on the Quickblader and Floral Fencer evolves. I'll talk about those a little more when we get to them. You're not always going to see that. Oftentimes it is just 2 Floral Fencers. As always, you can check out the deck log page using the code in the bottom right. It'll also be in the description. It is Y6W0 for this. So as I said, our cost curve is super low. We're not playing anything higher than 3. We're playing 17 1-drops, 17 3-drops, 6 2-drops. A little weird for an aggro deck to just sort of like skip out on 2. There's not as many good 2-drops in Sword that we would want to be playing, especially compared to all of our 3s that evolve. And our 1s that we can just flood with early. Oftentimes you'll just go, 1 drop on 1 and then 2 more 1-drops on 2 instead of playing a 2-drop. Amaro, even one of our 2-drops, is mostly meant as a little later in the game tool as opposed to just being a 2-drop. We have 35 followers, 5 spells. Same spells we're playing before, Heroic Entry and Unbridled Fury for removal. Otherwise, we're just followers, all gas, all the time. So taking a look at our cards, first we have Iron Wrought Defender. This is the 1-cost 2/2, so Goblin stat line, great for aggro. Fanfare, if you have at least 2 heroic cards in Cemetery, give this +1 defense and ward. We're playing the 5 heroic cards that exist, minus the 6th one being Flame Soldier. Still not playing him, he's still a little too slow for us. No new heroic cards were added in BP04, so all of that package is just going to be exactly the same. He's obviously not going to get the +1 defense and ward in the early game, but if you start playing them turn 3, turn 4 later, he might be getting it at that point. We're playing 3 Old Man and Old Woman. This is just a 1-cost 1/2 with Bane. I have seen some people saying that, oh, you're an aggro deck, right? You don't want to be playing a 1-attack follower when you could be playing additional 2-attack followers. You don't want to be trading your followers into theirs as removal. You just want to be, removing your opponent. But the problem with that is that in this game, Shadowverse, there is a keyword that causes us some pretty big problems. It's called ward. And sometimes you're going to have to trade your followers into your opponents as removal just so that you can attack their face. And in those situations, being able to trade a 1-cost that has 1 attack into any follower with ward is much better than having to spend like a 4/4 to remove a bigger ward follower, and then we lose out on all that damage face. So Old Man and Old Woman is going to be able to remove pretty much anything that we should hopefully have to deal with this deck, and allow our bigger followers, our 3/3s, 4/4s, to go into the opponent. You're going to see a lot of big wards in this format, Forest especially. They can put out 5/5 Ancient Elves as early as turn 2 if they go second, so really hard to deal with that. Goblin King is a 6/6 with ward. The Goblin Princess package is really strong, fits into a lot of decks, so Goblin Kings could really just pop up in any matchup. And that's, 6/6 with ward is very hard for anything else in Sword to remove. So Old Man and Old Woman is really important there. It's also going to be hard for a lot of the Goblin Princess decks to remove if you play at a turn early, sort of anticipating the Goblin King. So you can kind of use it as, you know, a threat to prevent your opponent from being able to ward effectively. Next, we have our new 1-cost 2/2. So this is our new Goblin stat line, replacing the Ninja Trainee. This one, notably, unlike Ninja Trainee, is a commander, whereas Ninja Trainee was an officer. You do start to see that matter in set 4. We start getting some more cards that differentiate between officer and commander, or only work with one or the other. We're playing Perseus, mainly for his actual text he has compared to Ninja Trainee. If there's at least 4 followers on your field, including this one, when he enters, he gets +1/+1, which makes him a 1-cost 3/3, which is obviously better than a 2/2. However, it does mean that he won't work with Mars, who buffs +1 attack to officers when they enter, so Ninja Trainee can potentially be a 3/2 anyway. This, I don't really know which one's better off the top of my head. Perseus is a lot easier to bring down as a 3/3 than Ninja Trainee is as a 3/2, but a lot of testing is probably going to be needed to actually figure out what's better here. A lot of people are going to tell you to play both, and we'll sort of talk about that as well as we get some more cards. We're playing 3 copies of Quickblader, and this is a card that we weren't playing in the previous build, or at least weren't playing as many copies of if we were. So 1-cost 1/1 Storm. This can just hit your opponent for 1. You can play this on the first turn of the game, excuse me, and start chipping in for damage, force your opponent to find removal for it. Usually not super threatening, but as I said, Mars is able to buff our officers +1 attack when they enter. So getting a 1-cost 2/1 Storm that pokes your opponent for 2 is actually reasonably valuable. And Mars can tutor it into play for pretty cheap, so it's a really nice card to have with Mars. Oftentimes you're going to see the counts on this and Floral Fencer swapped, one of those. You'll have 2 Quickbladers, 3 Floral Fencers. I have a few too many times in testing so far found that I've run out of Quickbladers when I needed more. So I'm on 3 right now and only 2 of the Floral Fencers because I think that card's a little slow. But either way could work. Maybe you play 3 of both. A little hard to determine there. Again, just one of those things you'll have to test for yourself. See in your meta which one sort of works better against the decks that you're playing against. Quickblader can evolve for an expensive cost of 3 into a 3/3 with Storm. Pretty strong. I am playing the 1 because, again, in a lot of my games, I found myself in a position where I had the 1 Storm damage off Quickblader, but if I could evolve it to get, 1 or 2 more damage, it would be enough to close out the game, and I was just shy of those few points. So I am playing the 1 Quickblader evolve now, but if you want to go to 2 Quickblader, 3 Floral Fencer, you can just change that back into the 2nd Floral Fencer evolve, and not a whole lot else changes. We're playing 3 copies of Swordsman. This is another 2-attack follower, although it only has 1 defense. Fanfare, select an enemy follower on the field and engage it. Activated ability, engage this to engage an enemy follower. Pretty good card. Good at taking care of the opponent's board. You might see a lot of times, like, this is another one of those cards. Why are we playing this instead of just the Ninja Trainee that's a 2/2? We don't really want to be trading our bodies into the opponent's. But there are also cards in the format, even apart from awards, that can give us a lot of trouble that aren't going to want to engage themselves normally. So they're going to be hard to remove. And spending the time to engage them with a Swordsman and trade one of our followers into them might save us a lot more in the long run than not dealing with it. Some cards that come to mind are like Prime Dragon Keeper from Dragoncraft. This is whenever another follower enters the Dragon player's field, they deal 2 damage to one of our followers. That means that in a single turn, they can clear 2 or 3 of our followers pretty easily without really having to do anything extra other than play their cards. Using Swordsman to engage this and be able to get rid of it in the early turns can really alleviate a lot of pressure that you might feel from that card, let you commit to board a little more effectively without having to worry about it. So it does have some times where it comes up, and since it has 2 attack anyway, I don't think Ninja Trainee is worth playing over this slot in particular. Unbridled Fury, removal spell. Again, this one kind of fits in the same vein as Old Man and Old Woman. There's a lot of cards that we probably don't want to use this on, though using it on Prime Dragon Keeper is still probably quite good. But dealing with wards, if we can just commit to a board and then use this to clear the ward and attack with everything else, that's a lot better than wasting some of our face damage on the ward. So 2 copies of Unbridled Fury feels really good. It's pretty easy to get this to 3, 4, maybe even 5 damage in this deck. I'd say usually 3 or 4. And that can be a lot. That can be usually enough to handle a lot of the early game wards, where you might see 2 3s or 3 3s or maybe 3 4s with ward. Amaro, our next heroic card. This is a 2-drop 2/2 strike. If there's another heroic follower on your field, give this +1/+1. This is going to be really easy to fulfill a little later in the game once you start getting some of your like big combos going. Early, if you play the Iron Rot Defender on turn 1 and then this, and they both live, you get some extra damage in. Or even if the Iron Rot Defender dies, if you play this and it lives, and then you can play a 3-drop heroic card, it can help you get in some more damage. But this is mainly here for its evolve. Again, it costs 3, like Quickblader. It's a really expensive evolve, but thankfully we do have ways to cheat it. It evolves into a 3/3. On evolve, we get to play a heroic card from our cemetery for 0. So, obviously we have all the heroic cards. Usually you're not going to want to play another copy of itself or an Iron Rot Defender. This is mostly going to be grabbing Mock Knight or heroic entry. So, Mock Knight gains Storm if it enters from anywhere other than your hand. Cemetery does include that, so Amaro can give Mock Knight Storm. Heroic entry is check top 4, put a Swordcraft follower that costs 3 or less from among them onto your field. If it's heroic, it gets +1/+1. The rest go to the bottom of your deck. A lot of times this will be your ideal turn 3 play to try to find a Mock Knight and give it Storm. If you miss, or even if you hit, if you can play Amaro the next turn, evolve it, recast the heroic entry, you get to go again. Obviously, if you do hit Mock Knight and it dies, you can just Amaro the Mock Knight back, give it Storm again. Lots of things you can do with this. It's basically just an extender to let us keep reusing our powerful cards so that we don't run out of gas to keep pressuring our opponent. Our other 2-drop is Luminous Knight. We were previously not playing this card. I think it's pretty powerful in the deck. It's a 2-cost 3/1, so high attack stat line. Fanfare, give another follower on your field +1 attack. Ideally, if you play a 1-drop and then play this, on turn 2, you can buff your 1-drop, hit for 3. Your opponent then has the option to either remove your 1-drop, and Luminous will hit them for 3, or remove the Luminous and buff the 1-drop to 4. And obviously, if they let Luminous live and you get to hit them with it, then whatever you play on 3 can also get buffed when Luminous dies. So she represents 5 attack, effectively, on a 2-cost body. I've seen some people say card's a little too slow. You would rather play 2 1-drops on turn 2. This might be the slot that you play Ninja Trainee in. That does allow you to go a little wider on board, and probably have more defense total. Because if you're playing, 2 extra 2/2s on turn 2, you are going to have 4/4 of stats instead of 3/1 of stats, but it's costing you an extra card, and this deck can run out of cards pretty quickly. So I think it's going to be very meta dependent on, are the decks you're playing against better at removing single followers? Are they better at removing wide boards? So there are going to be differences. It really is just going to depend on matchup to matchup. If they're able to deny last words effects, then this card does get worse, obviously, if you're playing against like Blackened Scriptures and things like that. So a lot to sort of work with here. I do think this only being 1 card out of hand can be pretty important, though. Just in terms of being able to keep up pressure, period, and not go into top deck mode where you're just hoping to draw the right card off the top. We're playing 2 copies of Floral Fencer, the sort of staple from the beginning. 3-drop 3/3 evolves for 1 into a 4/4. On evolve, we get a Knight and a Steelclad Knight. It's a 1/1 and a 2/2. So this represents 7/7 of stats across 3 bodies for 4. Super powerful, really good card. I'm only playing 2 in this list because we have a lot of 3-drops. A lot of them evolve. You're not really going to have time for this a lot of the time. Like, you're going to have better evolves to be using, which means this card will often just rot in your hand if you're, actually using Amaros, Mars, Mock Knights, Valiant Fencers. You're not going to have time to evolve this card. It's not going to be something you want to hit off of, heroic entry if you're going to evolve something else, etc. Or if you're just looking for Storm, this isn't Storm. So this card's a little worse in this deck, but it is still really good. If you play this on turn 3 going second, you get a lot of bodies, and you can follow it up with even more powerful plays the next turn. Can pressure your opponent's life total a lot. I'm not going to say it's a bad card. I just think 2 might fit better than 3 here. If you want to play the third, as I said earlier, you can cut a Quick Blader, cut the Quick Blader Evolve, good with 3/2 Floral Fencer line, and it's fantastic. This card does have a really good synergy with Mars, since she buffs officers +1 attack when they enter. It means your Floral Fencer now represents 10-7 of stats instead of 7-7. If you can have a Mars survive and then play this on the next turn, which is fantastic. Super good at just, it's half your opponent's life if they all live. Play 3 Mach Knight. Obviously, you have to in Heroic. This is really like the payoff for being in Heroic. 3 costs 3/3. If this card was put onto the field from anywhere other than your hand, give it Storm. We play previously 2 ways to get this out. Either the Amaro Evolve to play it from Cemetery, or Heroic Entry to grab it out of the deck. Both of those would give it Storm, and it would be able to attack. But we now have a new way in the Mars Evolve, which can search our deck for an officer on Evolve and put it onto the field. We do have to pay the cost of what the officer would cost, so Mars is going to have to pay 3 when you evolve her, which makes her a turn 6 or later play to get Mach Knight. But this does give us more ways to keep finding Mach Knights, keep finding Storm damage later as the game goes on. And it means that missing Mach Knights early might not be the worst thing in the world, as long as we have anything to attack with. Our Mars can still find them in the late game and get that immediate Storm damage in. And since he is an officer, Mars will also buff him to a 4/3 when he comes in, which is similar to what Heroic Entry is going to do with the +1/+1, allowing you to get 4 Storm damage in there. Mach Knight evolves for 1. On evolve, deal 2 to an enemy follower. If there's at least 2 heroic cards in Cemetery, deal 4 instead. So again, this might not be like online immediately, but once you get a few turns into the game, you've got Amaro, Iron Wrought Defender, Heroic Entries, whatever else in your Cemetery. This can deal 4, which can be pretty good at coming in, especially off of Heroic Entry. You Heroic Entry, bring this in, buff it, Evo, deal 4 to clear their ward, and then still get in for 4 or 5 damage afterwards. Mars is our other new card that we're playing. She's a new legendary from Cosmic Mythos. 3 cost 3/2. Whenever an officer follower is put onto your field, give it +1 attack. We play 8 different officers in the deck. Most of them are 3/ofs. All of our 1-drops outside of Perseus are officers, so they're all going to get extra attack when they enter. These are also really easy to summon off of Mars sort of early in the game, turn 4. Amaro will get buffed by Mars. That's usually not going to be a synergistic thing. It's just if you play a Mars and it lives and then you play an Amaro later, cool, your Amaro has extra attack. Floral Fencer, as I mentioned, has fantastic synergy with Mars since all the tokens are also going to get that attack. Mach Knight and Novice Trooper are both having Storm alongside Quick Blader. Make them prime candidates to play alongside Mars as well, since you're just getting even more Storm damage onto the field. Mars can evolve for 0, which is pretty powerful. However, on evolve, you can then choose to pay X. X is whatever you want to pay for it. Search your deck for an officer follower that costs X or less and put it onto your field. And then obviously it still has the officer buff effect. Main things we're going to want to search with this on evolve effect are Quick Blader, Mach Knight, or Novice Trooper, since they all have Storm when brought in off this effect. And then they're all going to get the extra attack. So evolving Mars on turn 4 to get a Quick Blader, or turn 6 or later to get Mach Knight or Novice Trooper are really going to be how you're going to want to use her. This is going to let you get either 2 or 4 damage in, and then still have the 4/3 Mars threatening more damage on the following turn. If you can ever play a Mars and it lives and you can play a second one, you start giving +2/+2 to your guys, and it gets really out of hand really quickly. So, fantastic card. It's just more extenders, more card advantage. That's going to help us keep playing into the last couple turns of the game. Even if our opponent's removing our board, we can keep finding new ways to attack with Mars. Novice Trooper, not much to say about this card. It is a 3 cost 3/3 with Storm. It deals damage to our opponent's face. We can bring it in off Mars. It gets buffed off Mars. We can bring it in off Heroic Entry. So lots of good stuff there. Lots of ways to just get this in, hit our opponent, and they have to answer a 3/3. Valiant Fencer, the boss monster for the Heroic Sword archetype from set 3. Still play 3 of him. 3-drop 2/2 Fanfare. Search your deck for a Heroic card with a different name from this card. Reveal it, add it to hand. That's basically always either going to be Amaro or Heroic Entry. If you play this on turn 3, you're probably going to get Heroic Entry so you can play it on the following turn, hopefully find Mach Knight, and keep going from there, keep attacking your opponent. If you play it on a turn that you're planning on evolving Valiant Fencer, so once your hand is really small and you have probably, I guess, 5 play points going second, 6 play points going first, you can get the Amaro, play the Amaro, evolve Valiant Fencer. He evolves for 1 into a 5/5. On evolve, you select a heroic follower that can evolve on your field and evolve it for free. This is why you would search the Amaro. You play Valiant Fencer, play Amaro, evolve Valiant Fencer, effect evolve Amaro, lets you skip the expensive 3 evolve cost that Amaro has, and then resolve Amaro's on evolve effect to get either the Heroic Entry or Mach Knight out of your cemetery. Sort of just keep chaining, keep building a really big board that your opponent's going to have to answer, and hopefully get some storm damage out of it as well. Lastly, our spell that we play at 3 cost Heroic Entry. This is just the broken card of the deck that, you know, you're going to either win or lose by this card if you play it. You're either going to hit 1-drops and 2-drops and feel really bad, or you're going to hit Mach Knight on turn 3, Evo point it, 5 your opponent, and just win the game. Really swingy card. Check top 4, put a Swordcraft in. All of our followers cost 3 or less, so they're all legal targets for Heroic Entry in this deck. If you choose a Heroic follower, give it +1/+1, bottom the rest. This is just how you're choosing stuff in. Hitting Novice Trooper is still fine off this. It gets you Storm. Hitting Floral Fencer can still build a board off of it. Hitting Mars, you can then evolve her and search whatever you need. Valiant Fencer can at least search you for either another Heroic Entry or whatever to extend off of that. And Mach Knight obviously is the ideal target that just gets to go in for damage. But pretty much all of our 3-drops are great to get off this. So just really powerful card. Definitely something you're going to want to see, ideally in your opening hand, to just jam on turn 3. The deck as a whole, the pros of it, obviously, as an aggro deck, it has super aggressive curve, low to the ground. Your hands are never really going to be bricky, unless you just draw a bunch of 3-drops and can't play like multiple cards in a turn. We have a lot of sources of storm damage and ways to boost our followers' attack to get even more out of that storm damage. And we can flood the field with followers for a low cost, make wide boards. This is especially true off of Floral Fencer, but just by playing multiple 1-drops or using Mars and Amaro to sort of chain extra followers into play, makes our opponent have to answer multiple threats at once. And if they don't have Storm, they're going to be sort of untapped, harder to remove, make our opponent find really good answers there. The cons are, when they do find the answers, it's pretty bad for us. This deck can struggle to deal with large ward followers. Obviously, we have Old Man, Old Woman, we have Unbridled Fury, and we have Mach Knights Evolve that can all sort of clear followers out. But outside of those, if we need to get damage into our opponent's face and they have followers that are either too big for those to answer or just multiple wards, it can be really hard to get through. You can lose a lot of your potential damage output to just having to put it into followers to get to your opponent. This deck does also run out of steam pretty quickly because you're playing multiple cards a turn a lot of the time. Most of your cards don't draw you more cards. Obviously, like Amaro is going to get you more guys out of Cemetery. Valiant Fencer searches, Mars searches, Heroic Entry actually doesn't. It just turns into a card off the top. But so you have like Amaro, Mars, Valiant Fencer that are going to get you extra cards. But even those extra cards that they're getting you, you're just immediately jamming into play. So your hand shrinks very quickly in this deck. And if you can't kill your opponent very quickly as well, especially if they have like removal or life gain or anything like that, you can just go into top deck mode and be really reliant on drawing the cards you need every turn. And when your opponent's at 3 and you draw an Iron Rot Defender for turn or an Old Man and Old Woman, it feels really bad because Mach Knight or Novice Trooper, I guess not Mach Knight, but like Novice Trooper, Heroic Entry, Amaro, any of those could potentially kill them. You draw a 1-drop Old Man, Old Woman, or a Perseus or whatever, and it's just like, okay, cool. Well, we just lost because we drew the bad card. So definitely something to worry about with the deck. I think it is a big downside. There's a lot of decks that have good removal, a lot of decks that have life gain. Can make it really hard for this deck to actually kill before it runs out of hand. So I don't think this deck's as powerful as it was in the last format, despite getting some good upgrades. But if you want to play aggro sword, this is probably where you're going to have to be, what you're going to have to deal with. Some other cards that you can look at for the deck, there's not really a whole lot. Aggro Sword doesn't have that many options. We're kind of just playing all the 1-drops. There's not really good 2-drops. We're playing all the 3-drops. And once you start going higher than that, you start losing a little bit of the aggro aspect. And you start turning into some other sword decks that we'll also talk about a bit later in another video. But first up, Ninja Trainee. Obviously, we talked about this a bit. He's the other 2-drop or 1-drop 2/2 that you can play in the deck, either over Luminous Knight or over Perseus, if you just want extra 1-drop 2/2 count. The only other card I'd really consider is potentially Flail Knight. So this is an officer, so it does get buffed off of Mars. It is a 2-drop that you can search off of Mars, which the deck doesn't really have a lot of right now. It's just Amaro, and Amaro is not fantastic to search off Mars. So it's a 2/3, which you might be thinking, oh, that's another like not very aggressive stat line. You're getting 2 attack for 2 play points. But strike, you deal 1 to an enemy follower and its leader, which means that this does effectively have 3 attack. And even if it has to swing at a follower, is still putting 1 into your opponent's face. And it can help you sort of act as removal, clear other aggressive threats from your opponent's deck if you need to race another aggro deck. Playing this, you know, you could clear things like Swordsman, you could clear Ambling Wraith, cards like that. Or, you know, you're just putting 2 face, shooting something just because you can, and dealing a 3rd damage to your opponent. So I think this card might be pretty functional in the 2-drop slot as well. Unfortunately, there's not really any good way to give it rush, though, so it is going to have to like come down, survive a turn, and then swing out on the following turn. The deck as a whole, in all of its 3-drop glory, again, you can check out the deck log code at Y6W0. Our evolved deck, pretty simple. Thank you for watching, as usual. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. This one was pretty quick, thankfully. Not a whole lot of options, not a whole lot of upgrades. Kind of just jam all the fast dudes. But if there's any other decks you want to see me cover, let me know in the comments. Would love to hear some ideas, some lists to talk about. Until then, there should be some videos on the screen for you to check out, some of the previous deck profiles. So, thank you, and we'll see you next time.